It's Andy here from Saving to Invest. And today's video, I'm just going to talk about your IRS transcript and using it and the cycle codes and the tax codes to just get a sense of what's happening with your refund status and also when you potentially can get your direct deposit date. I will say that Where's My Refund in IRS to Go is still the place to go to get the latest status, but I'm finding that the transcript can actually give you a lot of insights, especially if you're having a long delay or you can't find anything from WMR. So I'll talk about this video, some of that stuff, and hopefully it'll help you figure out what's happening with your refund. As always, if this information is useful for you, please hit the like button below and keep subscribing to get more videos like this and have a look at some of the previous tax return and tax refund videos I've published in the last few days. So this is a big screen which has a lot of stuff basically from your transcript. I'm going to walk you through each of these and what it means so you can see what the codes are, what the dates are, what the cycle code is. It'll all make sense. I'll get to it shortly, but I just want to show you this. And this actually comes from a Facebook group, Tax Refund Creationists, and there's a really nice description, so I thought I'd use it here as an example. But I'll get to this a bit later. Just want to make sure that, this is what eventually it'll make sense to you when I get through the next few slides. So to take a step back, what is your transcript, right? So your IRS tax transcript is actually provided by the IRS. It is a free service and it's done online. It is basically a financial record with the IRS that allows you to understand what's happening over the last several years, right? Including sometimes your current processing status and your payment dates. It's important that it's actually meant to be a historical document, so it has a record going all the way back. Think of it almost like your history with the IRS. But what it does is it does update pretty regularly during your current tax season and allows you to sort of see what's happening, what's forecasted to happen. Now, for the current tax season, I will warn you, your transcript can change as the IRS has processing delays and other issues. So don't always just rely to be the exact date. But historically, it is actually very accurate because it's used by a lot of banks and financial institutions to get information for loan approvals. It is also shows you what the IRS gets from your employer, other sources that give you income. So it's a really a good way of seeing how you're viewed by the IRS. So almost think of it like your school report that's kept there throughout, your high school or your middle school, but it allows you to basically see what the IRS knows about you. So it's a very transparent document, and again, it's available for free. The good thing is, I found this transcript, even if it's obviously great. Today I'm talking about how you can use it to get your refund status. But whenever you have tax notices or you have issues or you have delays or you see discrepancies, the tax transcript actually has a lot more detail than, of course, WMR or IRS to go. It takes a while to understand it, and I'll talk about that in this video, but it's actually a great document that I would recommend you download and look at least once a year, especially before, during, and after tax season to make sure that everything was paid and what the IRS has. And if you have issues, it's a way to sort of see what the IRS has about you. And again, if you're finding out that you can't get your refund or you're finding you can't get information from the WMR tool, the transcript I found can provide some insight that's not always available elsewhere. So it's definitely a good document, and I think it is underappreciated by a lot of people. Again, just to be clear, it is free. If someone tries to sell you or pay for it, don't accept it. It's all available on the irs.gov site. You can see here, you can get it online. You can also request it by mail. It just takes a lot longer. But so I recommend, especially in this day and age, you get it online. You'll have to provide some information, your social security, all that kind of stuff, so the IRS can verify your identity. But it is available online. You can download it as many times as you want to PDF and get it. It is not updated all the time, and I'll talk about that later on, but whenever it changes, you'll be able to see the latest version online. So I would definitely recommend that version. Of course, if you can't access a computer and you prefer it, you can always request it by mail, and it'll be sent to you in 5 to 10 days. So this is a quick slide, and I have a whole video on your IRS tax transcript. I'll link to it here and in the description below, which talks about what all these mean. But just to be clear, I mean, there are different levels of your tax transcript. I would definitely recommend you get the account transcript. That really provides what's going on with the IRS, especially if you file your return in the current tax season or maybe waiting from the previous tax season. Get the account transcript. That's the one I'll talk about in this video, and it's probably the most common one for getting information about your refund, what's happening with it after you file. So it's the account transcript, and you can see the different types you can get here. Some of these are used for when you want to get a verification with a third party, or you're trying to see, your wage and income potentially that's reported to the IRS. So use the account transcript. That's a good one, but the others will also give you information that can be very useful. All these again are free. So one thing I do want to highlight here, just so that it's clear to everyone, I'm not saying to rely on a transcript as the only source. I would say use it along with WMR and IRS to go. For the current year, the IRS, and I will say the WMR IRS to go is the place to get the latest status. It doesn't update often. The messages are very limited, can be confusing. Bars disappear, and I've got many videos around that. But in terms of your refund status, that's where you go. But again, I say using it with your refund tax transcript, you can get a lot more insight into what's happening with your current refund or your tax processing. I think, and it has a lot more codes, and it shows you a history, which I really like. So that's where I will say using both in combination is a great idea. Don't just rely on one or the other. So, you know, so this is basically a screenshot of your tax transcript, and you can see here that, and I'm going to put the pointer here. So this is, and I'll give you a few examples of this so you can see what I mean here, and what all these things means. But for this one, I'm just trying to show you, you have to use what they call your cycle code. So whenever you submit a return, you'll be put into an IRS master file, so you get into the processing. So the cycle code is important to understand what day of the week generally you're cycling, if you're daily or weekly. And I have a whole post and video about this, but just suffice to understand it, that your cycle code, if you look at it, it is 8 digits. So the first is the year, which is just your year of processing. So for this example, you can see here 2022. Last year, your tax transcript will have showed 2021. 06 is the week of the year, so it starts on Jan 1. So this is going to be sometime in February. And again, I said I have a whole article on the cycle code, so you can interpret it to the actual date. And 03 basically means day of the week. And day of the week is basically when your processing updates happen. It does not mean that's the date of your refund. It's the date of your refund only when you see it against code 846. That sort of means refund is issued. But what this tells you is that if you're in a daily processing, your transcript could be updated every day in the IRS master file. So that's a good sign. But a lot of people are in the weekly because they just have a few items, and so the IRS just updates it weekly. It also means that sort of will indicate the cycle of when your refund is paid. So if your processing finishes, if you're daily, you'll see that date and you'll probably be paid the day after. Weekly sometimes can move out a bit, but it's important to understand the cycle code. It really tells you if you're a daily or weekly processing, and this is how you can read it. And again, there's a whole video I have on this, which will provide you more details. But you can see this cycle code combined with your tax transcript code. These codes are all about IRS processing. And again, I just did a video on that a few days ago, and I'll post an article with this. But this code, along with the cycle code and these dates, can tell you a lot about when your refund is due. So it tells you when things are processing. It gives you sometimes, these are estimated dates. It doesn't mean it'll happen that date, especially with the current tax season. That gets updated as the IRS continues processing. And I'll talk a little bit more about this with that colorful slide, what it means. And the 846 is obviously, that's the code you want to see. It means your refund is issued. Most people see 152, especially during PATH Act when refunds are held up. But 846 is the code you want to see. It means a refund has been issued. Okay. The other thing that's I actually saw this in one of the Reddit groups was basically the 766 code, which means your refund is still processing. But it's a good sign. This is when you see this in your transcript, and all these is basically your tax transcript. I've taken a subsection of it out right now, but it basically means that your tax return was filed. So like you saw before, you figure out your cycle code, and it'll give you an estimated date of when it was filed. This date, if normally 21 days, that's the IRS standard for when they will issue your refund. So that you can use that as an estimate of when if it's filed here, generally around this date, up to potentially 21 days is when you'll get your refund. But normally I've seen it much sooner if there's no issues with your return. But if you're looking at this return, you can see here, the IRS has started processing. This is when you start seeing these new codes pop up in your transcript, it means the IRS is processing. So they've already figured out that they've given you a credit to account. This is probably a refundable credit. It could be the child tax credit, it could be the recovery rebate credit, stimulus check, and then the earned income credit has its own code 768. But when you start seeing these codes, it does mean the processing is happening, which is a great sign. So, especially earned income and child tax credit, those cannot be released until mid to late February because of the PATH Act, which I've covered in a recent video. But it means that they have been processed by the IRS, and then as soon as that clears, you should get paid based on your cycle code and this date. So this 228 is probably going to be a pretty accurate date for payment, which is a good sign and a good way of seeing it. Again, the WMR will update when your refund status moves to refund approved, and then refund sent is when you'll know your refund has been, deposited into your bank account. As I promised you, I'm going to finish on the complicated slide, but this is a great description. This actually, like I said, it came from the Facebook group Tax Refund Craziness. I would definitely join that. It's a good group, has a lot of good information. This is basically a snapshot at three parts of your transcript, the top, the middle, and the bottom. It's hard to fit everything on one page, and I apologize that this is tiny. You may need to look at this in portrait mode or in landscape mode to see the whole thing. But this is basically a great way of seeing what all the stuff on your transcript means, right? So if I start here at the top, the teal, that is actually the refund you're going to be due. So in this case, this person's getting $9,109, right? Which is a great sign, and this can be derived from the different numbers in here. These dates mean nothing. If you run the as of date, it basically means the date you've run this transcript. This will change every time you potentially rerun the transcript or when the IRS last updated the information. So this is more just sort of a baseline date, but it doesn't really have a lot to do with your tax refund processing. It's just as of the date, the information as of this date. And it will potentially change if the IRS has a lot of updates. I've talked about the cycle code earlier. That's important to get, and that'll be determined when you filed, and sort of it'll give you an indication over there. The yellow codes down here. If I jump here, and it's all here as well on the right. If you want to see what I'm talking about, these are your refundable credits. So like I talked about in the previous slide, 766, 768. One's a child tax credit possibly. This looks more like the child tax credit or the stimulus check, the earned income credit. These, the 0415 just means the end of tax season. It doesn't mean anything in terms of the actual payment. Those are just the dates as of the end of tax season in the IRS system, even though this tax season, is pushed out a few days. But the purple tells you that these are going to be paid to you. Remember, a negative on your tax return transcript means that it is a credit back to you. So the IRS is overpaying, you've overpaid the IRS, so they're giving you back the money. A refund is considered a return of overpayment by the IRS because you're giving them a tax-free loan. So this teal part is there. The other teal up here, the purple up here is basically the withholdings you had. So if you withheld stuff from your paycheck, it shows that you withheld $2,230 more than you needed to, which is fine. That's very common. People tend to withhold more money so they can get a refund at the end of the year. But all these numbers, these purple ones, minus 2,000, minus 3,000, minus 4,000, plus this 413, which is the liability you have with the IRS. So a lot of people, this will be zero just because normally they don't have a liability, but maybe this was a past year return or was an overpayment of a credit or something from your previous tax return, but meant that you have a liability with the IRS based on what you submitted. So this is, $413. So when you add up these things on the right, that will give you that $9,109 number that you see up there. Now there may be some rounding issues and all that kind of stuff because there's some stuff that may not be shown here or there's processing happening, but these numbers should reconcile as well. And then if you see all these things together, 846 is the code you want to see. So just for 2021, they got this code back here. So this person probably had, several amendments or potentially an extended tax return. But then you should see this code refund issued by the end of tax season. So that'll have a 2022 date if it's in the 2022 year, right? And you can derive that, like I talked about, from the cycle earlier. But hopefully this information, is providing you something to look at it. You may want to rewind and have a look at it. I've put the descriptions here so you can have a read of it yourself. You may have to, it may take a while to process, and leave a comment down below if you have any questions or comments, and I'm happy to provide more information later on.